Pipelines were ruptured, storage tanks exploded, and huge lakes of oil pooled in the desert sand. Choking black clouds filled the air, and day turned to night as the smoke blocked out the sun.
This piece of environmental vandalism only increased the pressure on Schwarzkopf to launch the ground campaign. His plan was a masterpiece of strategic deception. The main attack would appear to come down here, across Kuwait's southern border. 40,000 American Marines would thrust up into the Iraqi defenses. Alongside them, troops from other coalition countries, including large forces from Syria and Egypt. Their job was to make Saddam think they were just the start of a much larger attack from here in the south. But Schwarzkopf's main blow would come not from the south, but from the west. Under the cover of the air war, he had secretly shifted the bulk of his army, 1,500 tanks and nearly 300,000 men, up to 300 miles off to the west to launch a giant left hook. His main heavy tank force, with Britain's men and tanks on their right flank, were waiting for the signal to burst into Iraq and swing east into Saddam's Republican Guard divisions, dug in on the Kuwait-Iraq border. Schwarzkopf's men had a double mission: to liberate Kuwait and to so weaken the Republican Guard and the Iraqi army that they could never cause trouble in the area again. On the 24th of February, 1991, the ground attack began.
Out in the Gulf, the big guns of the US warships began a massive artillery barrage onto the Kuwaiti coastline. But the real attack would come from the ground troops. And the first to go in would be the US Marines.
This is it. Have fun.
Got an American flag in this pack right here we're going to raise in Kuwait.
The Marines had to bulldoze gaps in huge banks of sand like this one so the tanks and artillery could advance. As the first troops went in, none of them knew what would happen. The fear of a chemical attack was so great that the US troops wore chemical protection suits and gas masks. In front of them, they expected vast minefields and tens of thousands of Iraqi troops in heavily defended, entrenched positions. Coalition commanders expected the Marines to be able to penetrate just a few miles into the heavy Iraqi defenses, with as many as 1 in 3 of the Marines being killed or injured. But as the Marines crossed into Kuwait, they were amazed at what happened. Everywhere, Iraqi troops either abandoned their positions or were raising the white flag in surrender. Most of them were conscripts, and after the devastating 5-week air bombardment, they were sleep-deprived, shell-shocked, and dehydrated. They were in no position to fight.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, let's go! Get up here!
The Marines continued forward into Kuwait. There was little resistance, and nearly everywhere their progress was unopposed.
Right now, I feel sorry for the people that are remaining on the enemy side because we're going to wipe them out. It's just a matter of time.
The Marines were scoring a major success in their thrust up here into Kuwait, almost too successful. They and the Arab forces to the east and west of them were fast heading for Kuwait City. There was now a risk that some of the crack Iraqi units, like the Republican Guard up here, might retreat before Schwarzkopf's army could destroy them. So he brought forward the timetable for his main attack. He ordered his big left hook, including Britain's tank force, to go in 15 hours ahead of schedule. The British would go for Kuwait, and the US tanks would head for the Republican Guard.
Ten hours into the ground war, at 2:30 p.m., British and American troops began a massive artillery barrage onto the Iraqi positions in front of them. One of their key weapons was the multiple launch rocket system. As each of the rockets burst in the air above the Iraqis, it scattered 644 bomblets over them. It was as if they were being showered by hand grenades. In just over 30 minutes, more than 500,000 of these bomblets landed on the Iraqi troops. As the artillery died down, more than 150,000 coalition troops and over 1,500 tanks began their advance.
Saddam knew he couldn't keep Kuwait much longer, but he was still determined to show the Americans he had the capacity to hit them where it hurt. He ordered his troops inside Kuwait to counterattack against the US Marines. But they couldn't match the Americans' firepower, nor halt their relentless drive towards Kuwait City. However, Saddam still had one last sting in his tail. Iraqi troops fired a Scud missile towards a coalition base in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. The resulting explosion killed 28 Americans, and 100 were left wounded.
One of these ambulances has to go up there.
It was their biggest single loss in the war so far. Despite this incident, the British and American troops had to keep up the speed of their advance. Saddam's army was collapsing by the minute, and every minute counted if Schwarzkopf was to be able to destroy the bulk of Iraq's military equipment before it escaped. Schwarzkopf's main armored thrust had swept across 100 miles of Iraqi desert west of Kuwait and closed in on Saddam's elite Republican Guard. Finally, at 4 p.m. on the 26th of February, they came face to face.
A gunner in one of the lead vehicles spotted a line of Iraqi tanks on the horizon. The US tank commander realized that he was heading straight for a major Republican Guard position. The gunner in the lead American tank quickly fired off a shot at one of the Iraqi tanks. Seconds later, the American commander watched as the shell landed directly on the target. The Iraqi tank exploded, throwing a man out through the hatch, engulfed in a ball of flame. Within seconds, the other American tanks had opened fire. In just a few minutes, the Republican Guard's position had been obliterated.